Hey folks, this is Tom, your frugal prepper. For those of you who might be seeing this video for the first time who don't know, uh, I was a type 2 diabetic on 250 units of insulin a day, taking 5 blood pressure medications and 4 pills, 2 grams of metformin every day. I still had A1Cs in the tens. My diabetes was uncontrolled. I would try to follow the American Diabetes Association diet and eat my 100 grams of carbs a day, and my diabetes just constantly got worse and more out of control. I was diabetic for 15 years, and I was insulin dependent for 10 years. So last year, I started doing a ketogenic diet, and this is pretty much 1 year later, maybe a little over a year later. My last weigh-in, I don't weigh in all the time. I don't actually have a scale at home to weigh on, but my last weigh-in was 2 months ago. I started at 453 pounds, and I had finally crossed the 293-pound mark. I would guess that I'm probably down in around 280 right now. The weight loss has started to slow down a little bit, but it's still always 3-4 pounds a month. In the beginning, I lost a whole lot really fast. I got like 60 pounds off in like 3 or 4 months, and then it's just kind of slowed down more as I've gotten towards the end. I still have more weight to lose. I still need to lose another 60 to 70 pounds, but my diabetes is under control. I no longer take any prescription medications. My last A1C came in at 4.7. So I don't take any blood pressure medications. Even though my blood pressure is slightly on the higher side, I don't worry about it. It's getting better the more weight I lose. So here's what I want to talk about. A lot of people don't understand this. I know I didn't understand this. You go to the doctor, they do some blood work. They may send you out for a fasting glucose test where they have you not eat and then drink a bunch of sugar and see how high your blood sugar goes. But they diagnose you as diabetic. And then they usually start you out on metformin or one of the other drugs. Metformin helps you not make as much sugar with your liver. They have other drugs that increase insulin resistance. They even have a drug that helps you pee out the sugar, which will give you yeast infections. They even have all these different types of super potent, fast-acting insulins, and they come in all different mixes. Lantus, and the good old Lantus, and the Novolog at mealtime, and then you go into some of these other injections they've had over the years, Byetta, which makes you sick. These are, some of these are worse than others. I would say if you got to be on something, metformin will give you some gastrointestinal issues, but it's probably the least destructive to your metabolism. But what's going on here? Like, they treat blood sugar like it's the enemy, but it's not really the blood sugar that's the real problem that's going on. It's the fact that the insulin isn't able to do its job because your body's become insulin resistant. This happens at different stages for different people. Some people can be 20 pounds overweight and become severely type 2 diabetic. Other people, it doesn't happen until they're a couple 100 pounds overweight or more. It's just when your body decides, I'm not going to store any more sugar. So what happens is you eat sugar, your sugar goes up, your pancreas makes insulin, and the insulin comes up, and the insulin drives the sugar into the cells and tissues of the body that need it for energy, and when they won't take any more, then it drives it into the fat cells, so then the fat cells store it. So you eat sugar, you get some in the blood, all right, your liver will turn some of that into glycogen for emergency reserves, like emergency fast-acting energy that it can convert quickly, like you haven't eaten and you decide to run up a hill, okay, and it can't burn, it's not in fat-burning mode yet. That's what glycogen would be for. And then the rest is going to get stored as fat. As it's stored more and more, eventually there's no more room at the hotel. The fat cells are like, no, we're not taking any more, go away. And so what your body does is it makes more insulin, right? Your pancreas makes more insulin. And that's just the way of pushing the hotel door open and forcing a little bit more in there. And eventually, you can't make enough insulin. The blood sugar gets way too high, and then you have to, go on pills. And these pills have all different mechanisms. the way they work, but eventually you usually end up on insulin when the pills aren't working good enough anymore. And that's just the way of pushing even more insulin and pushing that door open again and shoving a little more in there. And so that causes some real problems. And it lands you in a great big trap. And at first, the first few years, you'd be like, I'm taking my insulin, my sugars are normal, I feel good. But every time I go to the doctor, I put on another 5 or 10 pounds, right? And eventually, you'll notice that the weight loss isn't increasing as much, but you're having to take more insulin, and your A1Cs get worse, which is your average blood sugars, and you're kind of in this trap. And so I drew like a little picture to kind of show you what happens. So in like kind of a healthy person, what you do here is the gray line here is you eat sugar. Sugar comes up in the blood. You have an insulin spike. I guess this is kind of backwards. Hang on. So you eat sugar over here, right? And then you have an insulin that comes on here. Around 15, 20 minutes, your body starts making insulin as that sugar comes up in the blood. And it's like, hey, we need to keep this level around here. And then the sugar eventually drops off. You burn through it. Some of it gets stored. And the insulin trails off right behind it. In between these two lines right here, you're going to have some type of energy, or you're going to get low blood sugar, right? And that's where your glycogen reserves are going to come in. And then you go into ketosis, and that's where your body starts turning the fat back into ketones. It can turn some of that fat into sugar as needed through a process called glyconeogenesis. But it mostly turns it into ketones, and like 99% of your body can run perfectly fine on ketones, including your brain, and you're in ketosis. And the next time you eat something, you have another, sugar increase. The insulin falls behind. But you're supposed to store this sugar as fat and then burn it right back off, right? This is what happens when you eat an early breakfast and you have to skip lunch and you burn it off till dinner. This is a perfectly normal process that happens. And your body will kick in. If you eat something really sugary, your body will give you pleasure in the brain, and it will encourage you to eat it again here. It will kick off the hunger hormones and want you to eat more sugar. This is because in nature, when you found a honey tree, you were supposed to keep eating it and eating it and eating it and get as fat as possible, because that was how you survived times when you couldn't find anything to eat. The problem is that we have Coca-Cola, Cheetos, and M&Ms at every gas station. And, what we do is we keep eating these sugary things. Sugar's added. 80 to 90% of the foods you find in your supermarket have added sugar. Right? And you keep doing this process over and over again, here's what starts to happen. So you start to have a bigger sugar spike, right? And the sugar's not wanting to store it, so the insulin has to come up even higher. You have to produce more insulin to force this sugar down. There will be a steeper drop-off right here where the sugar will take a dive, because the insulin's so high, it finally overcomes that pressure, and they'll both steeply drop off. But the space in between this drop-off gets much, much wider. Instead of like 5 minutes here, we're looking at, 30 minutes or an hour, right? This is why people often, right before they develop type 2 diabetes or are diagnosed with it, they will have hypoglycemia. And that is, there's a sharp here curve in the sugar. As long as this insulin's high, your liver cannot get into fat burning mode. It cannot start converting fat into energy till the insulin levels are down. So in between this time here, you're burning through your glycogen reserves. If you are doing physical activity or something in here and you're burning through that 70 grams of glycogen real quick, and you haven't eaten anything again to bring the sugar back up, you're going to pass out right here. And this is the same thing when you inject insulin, right? It's going to make this gap even wider. This is why you get that hangry feeling, you get the shakes, you got to go reach for a piece of hard candy or whatever to spike that sugar up a little bit. This gap continues to widen. You continue to inject more insulin. You continue to get fatter, which makes the gap widen more. And this is why the American Diabetes Association diet recommends all these carbohydrates with meals and recommends all these snacks in between. yada, 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 because they're trying to keep you from going hypoglycemic and going, passing out and going into a coma and dying. They're more concerned about that than they are having a little higher of blood sugars. And rightly so, right? You don't want this part to happen while you're driving a car. So that's the trap that you're falling into. Now, how did I get out of this trap? Well, I decided to do a ketogenic diet. I started off with really kind of a simple and not very clean type of keto. My very first keto meal was I had some sausage for breakfast, and I took my full dose of insulin that morning. And by lunchtime, or a little after lunch that day, I had low blood sugar. I had to eat something before I passed out. So what I learned to do was to take other foods that wouldn't have as much of a blood sugar spike at first. So I did a nice keto breakfast, and then that next day I took half of my insulin dose. And I ate a nice keto breakfast without many carbs, and then for lunch, might have a little bit of blueberry, or it might have even something like broccoli's got some carbs in it. Believe it or not, broccoli has some fructose in it, right? So, but something that was keto, some cashews or nuts that have a little carbohydrate in them, or some blueberries or raspberries or a strawberry, something like that has just a little bit of carbohydrates to bring the sugar up just enough so that you're not going to pass out, but there doesn't have to be as huge of an insulin spike. And so then eventually, after a period, no insulin, and I'm able to keep my blood sugars around 200, not going over the around 200 mark, so 180 to 220. And then after a week or two of that, my blood sugars were just reading 80s. Boom. I'm eating very keto meals. I'm not doing I'm trying to cut out all carbohydrates and stay in hard ketosis, and my blood sugars are fine. And then I ran into this really weird phenomena, which was I would be in hardcore ketosis, and I would take my blood sugars, and they were super low. One day it was 23, and I took it again it's a bad test strip. Get back 25. I'm like, oh. But I'm I feel fine. I don't have the shakes. I don't feel weird. I don't know what's going on. And what that was I was running on ketones. My body didn't need any sugar at the moment, so my liver wasn't going through the gluconeogenesis process to make it. Everything was fueled by ketones, which was really strange to me. And that happens when I go through an extended fast as well, if I don't eat for a few days. But then when I went back to the doctor, my A1C was a little high. It was a 6.9, which I was surprised about. And, this was my around 3.5 month follow-up. My A1C is a 6.9. I'm like, well, that's better than the 10 that I had on all this insulin. But now I'm at a 6.9 or whatever with nothing. So that's a real improvement. But I went ahead and went back on the 1 pill of metformin a day for another couple months. And, now my A1C is fine, my blood sugar is fine. I don't have any problem. Even if I eat some sugar, I'm pretty much getting back to this first graph where they fall off real close together. I can tell when I'm in ketosis because, number one, I have more unlimited energy. I'm not tired. I'm more clear-headed in ketosis than running on sugar. So I can tell, even my breath is a little different. And so I can tell, I had half a piece of birthday cake at my son's birthday party. There was an insulin spike. I could tell, I still have energy. I was bowling and stuff. But I could tell I'm not in ketosis. That's fine. I'd say 2 hours later, I was right back into ketosis. And I didn't have any of that hangry feeling in between there. So that's, starting to get back to the way it should be. And as I still have, another 60, 70 pounds at least to lose to be to what I would consider a very healthy weight. And that's what you can do. And as far as all the different types of keto that you might be considering, what do I eat? It's simple. You can start with hot dogs and mustard. You can start out with whatever. Just look at how many carbs are in this thing If there's added sugar in it, then don't eat that. If there's a bunch of carbs or added sugar, but keep your things simple. I'll tell you that I started out on more veggies. I got a little bit of an infection in my common duct where it meets my duodenum, and took some antibiotics and stuff. But that cleared up in a week. And I think it was just too much soluble fiber. I was constipated. Things were backed up. It wasn't lovely. But I find that I eat a lot more meat now, and that works much better for me. Meat's quick. Top it up, fry it, put some salt on it, eat it. Bacon, eggs, chuck roast. I eat a lot of chuck roast, pork chops, that kind of stuff. Real butter, heavy cream in my coffee. Eat lots of fat because that's going to really keep you from being hungry, and it's going to keep you feeling good. Now, you still need to go through times where you're not running on the fat that you ate to burn fat. You won't really gain any weight eating way too much fat all the time, but you'll get to a point where you're not losing it. So you may need to start to say, I'm skipping lunch, or better yet, I'm going to skip breakfast and lunch and just eat dinner. And then you'll have those long periods in between where you switch from burning the fat that you just ate right into burning your own fat. And you're not that hungry and you feel really good. But that gets you, the first goal for you is going to be to keep your blood sugar from dropping off in that gap by maybe eating, one of my favorite things is to take some Carb Master yogurt I get at Kroger's, which is real low in carbohydrates, the plain vanilla, and then I add a little bit blueberries, some vanilla, and a little bit of pumpkin pie seasoning. It's just like cinnamon seasoning stuff. There's no carbs in it. And it makes a delicious little snack with a few carbs in it. Something like that, just to keep those carbohydrates up. But don't, go grab a candy bar because your blood sugar is low. You need to keep some other things handy if you get in that gap and you need a little bit. Because the goal is to just get the sugar up enough to get the insulin to start to come back down and meet them together right at the end and get back into ketosis. And then once you're in ketosis, try to skip some meals and stay in ketosis. And the more often and longer you stay in ketosis, the better you'll eventually start to feel, and the diabetes will go away. I will just preface this by saying suffix it by saying, talk to your doctor before you cut out your insulin. Don't do what I did, which is just stop. That was probably a mistake, but talk to your doctor. If your doctor's resistant to the idea, find another doctor. Or, if you have an endocrinologist, they're kind of hard to replace. There's not enough endocrinologists these days. But just make it clear that you work for them and this is something that you want to try. And one of the arguments you may want to have with them is, look, if I cut way back on my insulin, or depending on how much you're on, stop taking your insulin. I'll stay on my metformin. I'll stop taking my insulin. And, maybe I'll have some blood sugar readings in the 300s. Is that going to kill me? I mean, as long as I drink a lot, and I'm not going to pop a kidney or lose a leg or go blind in a month, right? If I do that for a month, it's not going to kill me. Over years and years, it's really bad, but for a month. And then I want to try the keto. And I need to get the insulin down to try to eat keto and get this under control. And within that month, you're probably going to see a drastic improvement in your blood sugars doing keto. So there is a solution to type 2 diabetes. It's healable. I am so tired of seeing people using legs, toes, fingers, going blind, being on dialysis and having no kidneys, and just being sick and tired and hurting and having arthritis, having all this inflammation in their body. I see that look on people's faces. I see it, and I'm like, I know exactly what that is, because I felt it every day for years. And there's no reason to do it. There's no reason to go through that. You don't need to add insulin and add more pills in to make yourself healthier. You need to take sugar out. And there's so much sugar in everything. They put it in there to keep people addicted to the food, and it's cheaper than putting in other ingredients. And for some reason, we went through this whole low-fat, low-cholesterol thing. I'm not going to go into that in this video. Just don't worry about fat and cholesterol. It's not important. It doesn't cause heart disease. But we went through that phase, and in order to make the fat-free sour cream taste a little bit palatable, they had to add sugar to it, right? So that's one reason a lot of sugar got into foods. But you just need to watch carbohydrates. You can go by net carbs. I just go by total carbs, and I try to eat less than 30 a day if I want to stay in good hard ketosis. There's times when I'm pretty sure I get pretty darn close to 0 a day. And if once in a while you're a month or two into this and you're like, oh, I screwed up and I ate an ice cream cone. Keto diet is very forgiving. The key is to be like, okay, I screwed up, I ate the ice cream cone. Do I want a cookie too? Well, let me go ahead and have the cookie right now within the same hour that I ate the ice cream cone. So it's one insulin spike. And then after I'm done with this, I'm going to go right back on to eating some chuck roast and some broccoli. And you'll go right back into ketosis. You really need to not cheat for that first 8 weeks at least. Probably more like 16 weeks to really get your body adapted to going into ketosis. But after that, I had a piece of birthday cake at my son's birthday party, and I went right back into ketosis and right back on the diet. And if you want to help burn a little extra of that off, do a little fasting, lose a little more weight, it'll be fine. So it's not magic, folks. I will just say this. You'll see so many people out there, they're like, well, I do the potato diet from some guy on YouTube, and I eat nothing but potatoes 24/7, and I lost 100 pounds, and I do this diet, and I do that diet, blah, 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 blah. Keto's not a diet. Keto is just removing sugar from your diet. That's really what it is, and staying in ketosis. It's also about removing inflammatory oils and foods, but if you're trying to cure diabetes, you need to worry about sugar. And it works for everybody. The potato diet might work for a small segment of the population, but keto works for everybody because it's built in. It's natural. It's part of what your body has always done, and everybody's body has always done. You don't eat. You have to burn fat and make energy out of it. When you burn fat, it turns into ketones. Your muscles and brain and body can run on ketones. There's like a little small percentage of your body that actually does need some glucose, and your liver can do gluconeogenesis, and it can turn protein and or fat into sugar. And this is normal. People will say, you'll lose all your muscle if you don't eat. If that's true, we would not have survived as a species because ancient man might have days go by where they couldn't get anything when they were out hunting. They still lived. They might have had to hunker down in their cave during the winter not to freeze to death, and they didn't have any food for a month. They still lived. And they didn't lose all their muscle. They weren't just piles of fat, skin, and bones, right? So you do lose muscle when you starve, all right? And when you starve is when you don't eat, you've run out of all your fat reserves, and your body is trying to find some way for you to live. That's when your body will start to digest your proteins that are good proteins that it normally would keep. But that's way off. That's like if you don't eat for 3 years or something, if you're the size that I am. So, a lot of these things that you hear aren't true. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. No, you're already in ketosis. When you wake up, you should skip breakfast and stay in ketosis. Other things, if you're just, found out you're a type 2 diabetic, oatmeal and bananas and whole grains and whole wheat bread, that's bad for you. A banana is probably worse for you than a Butterfinger, right? Don't eat that stuff. It's full of sugar. And the ADA diet is trying to get you to eat sugar in moderate amounts spaced out throughout the day to fill in this gap so you don't become hypoglycemic. That's the point of it. That's what they're trying to do. That's why they kind of lie to you, okay, about what the actual cause of diabetes is. They're trying not to get sued by you going into a coma while you're driving. they're not necessarily looking at your long-term health. They just want to control it with insulin and medications and keep you from going hypoglycemic and just kind of stabilize things, right? When you start talking about healing the body and healing these symptoms of this metabolic disorder, it gets a little riskier for them. And so they're probably going to advise you against it. You just have to tell them, I understand your advice, but I'm not following it. I'm going to do this. What's the best way for me to do this, right? That's a liability thing. Doctors don't like getting sued. So that's all I got. I'll probably do more videos. And I think that I really want to reach out to people who are type 2 diabetics, especially to kind of help them through this process. I didn't do keto because I want to look all studly, although I eat a lot of meat now and I'm getting some real decent muscles and I have a collarbone again, right? Look at some of my old videos to see what I used to look like. But, you know, some people doing keto because they want to, like, look super trim in a bathing suit, you know. I've had people say to me, like, oh, have fun with your stretch marks losing weight that fast. And I'm like, I'm trying not to die. I don't care about stretch marks. I'm not doing this because I'm vain. I'm trying to get off of all these pills that make me feel like crap and live and be happy. It's okay if I have a little loose skin. I have a little under my neck. You know, I'm fine with that. It works. It really works for people who have the type 2 diabetes. It's night and day. I'll just give you one quick example before I go. I loved going to this amusement park we have locally called Kings Island. You know, I used to go to Kings Island. I'd ride the swinging boat. I'd go up on the Eiffel Tower. I'd ride the bumper cars. I could do a few things, right? But most of the stuff I didn't fit in. And I was pretty convinced I didn't like roller coasters. But the truth is I hadn't been in one in a long, long time because I was too fat to fit by the time I was 14. So I would walk around that park, and usually we might do an open to close, but most of the time we went like a half a day. And I spent most of my time just kind of sitting on the bench, enjoying myself, while my wife and my son rode rides. And I was okay with that, because I looked at roller coasters like, those people must be insane. You know, I wasn't really looking to ride them. And so I started doing the keto about this time last year, and I lost a little weight. Like, at first, like, right off the bat, like 25 pounds just melted off. And I found that I could fit on a roller coaster there called Adventure Express. I had to push an extra, you know, I had to push a little bit to get that second click, but I could get in there and I could ride it. And I just loved it. I fell in love with it, had fun. And as I've lost more weight, I can fit on just pretty much every coaster there that I've tried to fit on. So far, you know, if you know what Kings Island is, they have one called the Racer, a wooden coaster. They have one called the Beast that I've rode. I just got to where I could fit on Stunt Coaster. I cannot fit on the Yellow Kids coaster. I can fit on the Blue Kids coaster. I don't really like roller coasters that go upside down so much, or ones that go super high. So I've left the ones like the Vortex and the Diamondback alone so far. But have fun. And so anyway, now I can go open to close. I can have fun. I'll find like the Bat is one me and my son love to ride, like when it gets dark right before the park closes, and it's a 1/4-mile hike back to that sucker up and down steps. And I found myself Friday night like jogging back there, like, come on, we gotta hurry. And I first started jogging, I'm like, oh, I hope this is a good idea. But I made it back there. I mean, I was a little out of breath, and I ran up the steps and stuff too, and my heart was beating a little hard, but was okay. And if I would have done that 160 pounds ago, I don't know that if I would have kept jogging, I might not have made it back there without like falling over from a heart attack or something. I mean, I just couldn't have done that. So I'm stronger, I'm leaner, and I feel better today. I'm 45 today. I feel better than I did at 25, or maybe even earlier on than that. So, I was first diagnosed with diabetes right around 30 years old. So yeah, you you can cure this. You can get better. It will take time. It's not always easy. It's hard. You do have cravings sometimes for something sugary, and you just have to eat something that's not sugary till you're so full that you can't eat the sugary thing. That's how I dealt with it in the beginning, right? Um, and get through it. It does take some amount of self-control and self-discipline, but it's so much easier than sitting around the house and hauling your blood glucose and your insulin, your blood glucose tester and your insulin with you everywhere, and making sure you always got some snacks. And my whole life, at one point there, I was on Lantus and 3 mealtime insulins, and my whole life revolved around my blood sugar and my insulin and taking it. And I got to make sure I get this done before this meeting so I can take my sugar and see how much I need to eat. And that's all gone today. And I feel great. I have a lot of energy. I do a lot more. Sometimes we go to Kings Island like 3 times a week, in a 7-day span. So, tons of fun. I had so much inflammation and arthritis in my fingers before this that I couldn't snap my fingers. I hadn't snapped them in years, and now they're fine. All my knee pain's gone. Shoulder pain, where I tore my ACL, is gone and healed. So it really is a very healing diet. Once that insulin starts to come down, your body really does start to heal itself, and you can come back from this. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. It's time, your frugal prepper. If you have any questions, leave them down below. If you've had success with the keto diet as a diabetic or not a diabetic, I'd love to hear about it down below. I'd love to hear what your stories are. I read every comment, and I try to reply to them all. I'll talk to y'all later. Everybody have a good day.